Welcome back to Cyber Bytes. Today, we're joined by FIG co-founder and CEO Gal Shafir, former Google SecOps leader and RSA Innovation Sandbox finalist. In this episode, we explore why security teams don't trust their own systems and how FIG is building the foundation for truly resilient security operations. Enjoy the show.
Cool, so welcome, Gal. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on, dude. So thanks for coming on the show. And for the audience, Gal is the CEO and co-founder at FIG Security, recently out of stealth, so we can talk more about that. So great to have you on. How are you?
Thanks for having me. I'm great, thank you.
It's a pleasure. And I think the place I want to start, Sandbox this week. So RSA were live, but Sandbox this week, you guys were one of the finalists, which is awesome. How was that experience?
That was an amazing and surreal experience. You know, I've been on stages in the past. I like talking to people, but being in front of 2,000 people and like preaching what was a year ago just an idea and seeing it live and people actually coming to hear what you have to say, it's just surreal.
It's amazing, yeah. And as you say, it's 12 months, right? The journey, how quickly is that moving? And you're like one of the only companies that have come from like stealth into the sandbox, right?
Yes, I don't think there's been many companies, if at all, that have been chosen to sandbox while in stealth. People told us not to do it, and we were like, let's just do it anyway. Yeah. And we got chosen, and that's very exciting.
It's impressive. And what goes into, for folks that maybe haven't experienced the sandbox or are like curious around it, what goes, because there's a lot of preparation, I can imagine, that goes in the back end. What's like the high level of what that actually looks like?
I think what's the most important thing, and what for us was important, is not to be led by the deck, but to have a very clean deck with minimal text and minimal everything, and let me lead the conversation to the point where it was just muscle memory. Nothing came from the head on the stage. And you could wake me up in the middle of the night and tell me, do the pitch right now, and it would be 2:57 sharp. So I think that is the prep.
I did nail down, love it. And so for the audience that don't know much about FIG security at the moment, we'll dive into that. Where I want to start is your background, because you come from a basically being a domain expert in the space. So can you tell the audience a bit more about your journey and where you came up from?
Yes. So before FIG, I led the global security architects team at Google Cloud Security, mostly focusing on Google SecOps. That was the largest business at the time before the Wiz acquisition. So really kind of grew up in SecOps. I actually got to Google by the acquisition of Simplify for $500 million in 2021. And before that doing, other things as well. But really the background is that we and myself like grew up around security operations before it was cool. For me, it was always cool. But
yeah, I love that. And was there a moment, so you obviously went through that acquisition, probably saw, as you say, one of the largest security kind of companies. Was there a moment that was like, okay, this is why I'm going to go start FIG? I hear sometimes there's a specific moment, others it's not so specific, it's just kind of a journey.
I would say it was a journey. That said, it was a very clear journey. For us, first of all, it was important. We didn't, ask 20 CISOs what's painful for you and then when to build a company. We wanted to build a product that solves a real problem that we're very, intimately familiar with. For us, it was, you remember in 2024, Google was all around pitch AI on everything to everyone. And obviously my job was to meet with the customers and talk about how we're weaving AI into SecOps. And the more we had the conversation, the more you saw that the reaction was, great, I'm happy that you're weaving AI into SecOps, but I don't actually trust my foundation today. How am I going to trust this AI agent that you want me to use? And that was the moment when we kept hearing the same story over and over again, that we understood that there's just a bigger problem to solve to allow this migration to happen.
Yeah, and I would love to dive into that in terms of like, what does that actually look like more granularly, like double clicking there around the problem space, because from the outset, and everyone agrees this, the SecOps space, especially AI SOC vendors, for example, it's become very, very crowded. It feels like everyone is kind of jumping into this space. It'd be great to understand like the differences potentially there and how you guys are positioning yourself against folks like that in the space.
Sure. So most of the, if not all of the SOC AI vendors out there are mostly focusing on the analyst side, right? Sure. So they look at alerts and they help you do the triage autonomously and kind of replace the automated playbooks to do it more robust. We look at the infrastructure. So we're not trying to process more alerts, but we actually look at the foundational infrastructure, which is very complex, very interdependent, multi-vendor by nature. You have data pipelines, and you have SIMs, and you have data lakes, and you have AI agents, and you have SOAR platforms. And then you have an engineer that needs to orchestrate this entire infrastructure to make it work. So the outcome would be, we are secure right now. And we actually look at the entire infrastructure from the sources through pipelines and everything until it actually gets to the AI agents to ensure the data integrity. So when the agents tell you that you're good, you know that it's because you are and not because something got broken in the plumbing.
Yeah, that's interesting. And so I think the infrastructure, I spoke a lot, that there's a lot of folks that are kind of like working on top, right?
Exactly.
And the infrastructure layer, as you say, is that, to your point earlier around, is if it's a trust thing, it's somewhat like broken anyway. So how is this problem, I guess, being, from the conversation you had, solved today? And how is your approach, talking a bit more deeply around the infrastructure, how is that foundationally different to what folks are doing today?
So today, there's really no product that does this, right?
Okay.
And maybe I think the best way to talk about it is to see the transition that happened in the app infrastructure.
Okay.
It used to be pretty simple. There was a server, there was a client. An engineer could see what's going on and fix it and engineer it pretty easily. Over time, the infrastructure got increasingly more complex and fragmented for an engineer to understand what is going on. Kubernetes, right? Things happening in many places, to the point where nobody really could answer the simple question of, are we operational right now? We see this exact same thing happening in SecOps.
Okay.
The infrastructure is extremely complex. Engineers are trying to do their best, mostly manually looking at configuration files, mapping on a whiteboard what is connected to what, and how a change over here might break something over there, which is why their job today is mostly around plumbing rather than actually security. And also, which is why every change that they want to implement on that infrastructure takes weeks instead of minutes, like any other engineer in the organization.
Sure, yeah. And let's talk about the journey of Fig. So 12 months in, super fresh, very exciting. You're moving very quickly, clearly. Spent a lot of time building in stealth. Are you now in the market? Are you ready to be distributed to enterprise customers? Maybe you have them already?
Yes, definitely. We have them already. We're deployed in a double-digit number of enterprise accounts, including Fortune 600, Fortune 500, Fortune 50.
Awesome.
The problem is the same problem regardless of the organization side. So even if you hire 1,000 engineers, they really don't understand everything throughout the complexity. So it's really a control problem more than anything else.
Yeah, great. And for Fig, everything's still so new, but what do the next 6 to 12 months look like for the business? And how do you potentially see the space evolving within that time as well?
That's an amazing question. And so maybe I'll start by saying that everything started with observability. We wanted to, fix a very concrete problem that we knew is very, very painful. And the solution was, let's create this observability and data lineage layer so people could see and understand and find and fix issues across their entire infrastructure. Sure. When we started doing that, customers started asking a question like, hey, if you actually see everything, can you help me write a new detection rule and expand my coverage? Okay. Could you help me reduce my false positive? Could you help me migrate from my old SIM to a next-gen SIM in a couple of weeks instead of a couple of years? Or do my cost reduction initiatives without the fear of breaking detection and response? So things have started to come in use cases that originally we didn't even think about, but we understood that given the foundation, which is deterministic, that we run on, that we've built, there's a lot of magic that we can do. So the next stages of Fig in the market is obviously not how you sprinkle AI on top of a SIM, but how do you use this deterministic layer of understanding and observability to allow engineers to do things that would have taken them months or years sometimes in just a couple of minutes and hours, given the deep understanding of their entire infrastructure.
Yeah, it's amazing. And just expanding on that, this week from some of the conversations that you're having, is there any additional insights, or what are you hearing in the market from the folks that you're speaking to?
In terms of?
Yeah, in terms of like, I mean, related to FIG potentially, or generally speaking, the conversations you're having, are you hearing common themes at the moment, generally speaking, in security?
Yes, and the theme is always SOC modernization is some of the biggest projects that right now
Sure.
sits on every CISO's table for the next couple of years. Everybody understands that their SOC is going to look very differently in 2 years than it does today. It's going to be cheaper, it's going to be better and faster, but it is going to be more complex, and it does require more trust in the foundation and the data layer underneath everything else, so you can actually do the migration and the transition to the SOC of the future.
Sure.
So the conversations are always around, how do I manage and engineer this entire thing so I can make the transition? Because my boards are now requiring me to adopt those AI agents, and I don't know how can I trust them.
Yeah, yeah. And rewinding, so you came through the acquisition, and you've probably seen a ton of interesting stuff in a very large environment. Is there something that you've taken or learned from that experience that's like foundational to how you operate at FIG and how you're running today?
Totally. I think what was really interesting is, my journey was in Simplify, I learned how to do the 0 to 1 stage, and at Google, we learned the 1 to infinity stage. So it helped me shape my understanding of how to build organization and how also to sell and work with the enterprises at any given scale.
Sure. Yeah, and it's fascinating. And why FIG?
You want the real story or the one we tell to VCs?
I want the real one.
The real one? Well, when we started ideating, the names of the meetings were Gal, Nir, Roy, which are the 3 names of the founders. And at some point we said we need to find something short, 1 syllable, 3 letters. We asked ChatGPT. We got a few names. We saw FIG. We loved FIG. We just went for it. So I guess you can say we're AI from the very beginning.
AI native. And what's the VC story behind it?
Well, when Adam and Eve discovered intelligence after they ate, from the fruit, they used fig leaves to hide their shame.
Okay.
And we help customers hide their shame.
That's the tie. I like
of
it.
their infrastructure.
Yeah, the branding's great. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm gonna have to take the t-shirt. So and then so we've discussed FIG, and we've discussed how the space is potentially going to evolve, which is super interesting. And as you say, I think the problem, folks aren't really looking at the problem in this way. It's you're approaching the market in a different angle. Why is that stemmed? Is that from your learnings that you've taken from the acquisition journey? And maybe you could guide me here, is there anyone else trying to tackle the problem from this angle in the market today?
So look, in cyber, when somebody is getting a lot of traction and customers are asking a lot of questions, you'll have 50 competitors in the next month. So we know that, and we're waiting, and we love competition.
Yeah.
I think for us, it was always around, we grew up in that market. We built those products. We sold those products. We worked with those customers. We sat in the SOCs with the engineers that need to operate them.
Sure.
And we just knew which questions to ask, right? It's all around the right questions. Because if you ask somebody what's painful for you, they don't understand product management. They'll tell you sometimes something just because they need to give you an answer.
Sure.
And when you know how to ask the right questions, I think it can lead you to building a great product that people, see and say, how didn't I think about it before?
Yeah. And I think, as you say, that stems from just being a domain expert in the space, right? And understanding what to ask versus someone that isn't in the space. Like myself, I wouldn't have a clue of the right questions and the right positioning of those questions.
Yeah, and maybe I'll say something controversial, but I think today what differentiates amazing companies from not so amazing companies is less so about the technical moat, which is going away very, very soon because of AI, and everybody's smart and everybody can develop things very fast. What differentiates companies, and that's where we, I think, shine and differentiates us, is first of all, the very intimate, relationship with the customers to be able to build the user experience that knows what their day-to-day and pain points look like. Very strong go-to-market muscles and the ability to build a brand.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, Gal, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast this week. Excited to follow the journey and hopefully be part of that. You're a natural presenter. So thanks for coming on, dude. It's been an absolute
Thanks
pleasure.
for having me.
Great stuff.